I need to know everything, who and the what and the where, I need everything. Trust me, I hear what you're saying, but I like it's new what you're telling me. I'm curious, George, I hop in the Porsche, 5 and a I'm ready for war, I'm coming from ghosts, eternal ghosts, I need to know everything. Now you be surprised at the end when you get this by letting them talk, don't let them talk. They keep quiet, maneuver in signs to let them talk up their body, another one body, that's just how it go. I got some secrets, I'm shaking the game so they stay on their toes. Stay in your lane, I stay on the go. I get to play with the pros and act like a rookie, so they overlook me, they're not developed.
Hello, everyone. We're ready to get another week of Startup on the Blocks, and we're glad you all could join us tonight. We're streaming live on Facebook, and LaRon, if you turn your camera and mic on, we can get the show on the road. Hello. How are you?
Hey, how's it going?
All right. How are things up in Atlanta?
Warming up. Can't complain.
All right. Fantastic. So, Startup on the Blocks, LaRon, is all about trying to help, be a part of the startup ecosystem and kind of help with the inclusion part of it as well. And so we want to make sure the entrepreneurs are here in Northwest Florida get involved in this startup world and try to get some of that money that's been set aside for Black and Brown founders out there. And so part of the process is we like to have experienced founders on to kind of share their experiences, so the people that are just getting started on their startup journey can kind of learn from them. And so that's the role you're playing tonight, and we sure appreciate you coming on at the last minute here.
No, thanks for having me. All
righty. So why don't you kind of introduce yourself to the audience so they can kind of get a feel for who you are and what and how you got started on your startup journey and your experiences so far.
Okay, cool. Well, a pleasure to meet everybody who I can't see right now. It's a little in this format, but I'm going to assume somebody's listening.
Yeah, somebody's listening.
Somebody's listening. Cool. So I'm Layron Walker. As Lloyd mentioned, I'm out of Atlanta, so I was born and raised in Atlanta. I'm not one of the transplants that typically show up here and don't leave. But all jokes aside, so born and raised in Atlanta, and my personal background, I have a bachelor's and a master's in electrical and computer engineering, and I actually left undergraduate at Tennessee State and went to Purdue University where my master's was obtained there, but I actually was in the direct PhD program. So I thought that my path was to go and obtain a PhD and do research and things along those lines. But somewhere along the way in undergraduate, I got exposed to the internet, and I was actually taught and paid money to learn how to build websites and code in HTML. And that started my path of going down the path of being a technical person. And so lo and behold, in grad school, I'm about 5 years in, I had started a web company, and we were making a lot of websites and content management systems. And I realized that I had enough money to live for a year if I didn't make any more money. And that's when I kind of had the idea that I really wanted to go full time and build my software development company. And so for the almost 20 years or so, I've been self-employed and working in the space of technology. And so present day, I'm I serve as a tech startup founder. So I run a company called Mantis EDU, where we focus on the education technology sector, where we build hardware, software. You've heard probably the term Internet of Things. So we build devices that help kids and students learn technology through hands-on learning activities. So that's a real big passion of mine because technology changed my life. But outside of that, I also have built a company. I've sold a company before. About 3 years ago, I sold a company called MyStemKits.com, which at the time, and probably still is, we built the world's largest library of things that you can 3D print to teach math and science, pair it with curriculum. And so that started out as like a side project, and we scaled that business. And lo and behold, one day I got a phone call unannounced saying, would you be interested in selling your business? And I was like, I guess so. And so that ended up being sold to a company that was publicly traded. So that was a really cool experience. And then outside of that, I've also played in other parts of the ecosystem. So I've played the role of kind of advisor, mentor. I played the role of angel investor. And so I've done a lot of different things in the space, and it's pretty exciting to me.
Fantastic. That's a real, sounds like a real exciting journey. And so I was trying to remember back, when we first met in person, but I also remember now that when Jabril left to go to Atlanta, he connected me with you, and I guess we ended up meeting down at the Collision Conference.
Yeah, it was weird. Yeah, it's like we met and had a phone call, and we ended up in New Orleans.
Yeah,
back in the days when you could jump on planes.
Yeah. So, but it's pretty neat to kind of, just like that. The first hour of our Startup on the Blocks is all about networking and connecting. Mm-hmm. And with this COVID environment, this Hopin platform seems to be one of the only. I actually haven't found another one that allows you to do one-on-one networking. So
that's an amazing platform. I used it early on in COVID for a conference, and they've done a good job, and their investors have rewarded them for that.
So you've been getting those emails, like they launched in February 2020, and now they're worth $5.65 billion.
And what's crazy about it, though, you talk about startups and technology, but they really got the experience right. So when I did the first conference I did that shut down pre-COVID, when COVID first started kind of becoming a thing, we used Hopkin. I was like, this is the closest thing to a live event you can do, and it just works. And so, but that shows the power of entrepreneurship when you can kind of make things come together.
Yeah, that's exactly right. And so one of the lessons that we try to teach the audience is this idea of coming up with a scalable idea. And so my experience with Hopin was when I had signed up for a demo day up in Atlanta, and back about a year ago, and then when I finished signing up for it, I think another gentleman that was from Atlanta was actually hosting a conference out in San Francisco. So I hopped on it and discovered the one-on-one networking, but the irony was this: when you talk about scalable systems, I actually signed up, didn't have to talk to anybody, had my first event, didn't have to talk to anybody, and so it allows quick onboarding of customers.
Yeah, and that's critical. I know, like I said, played a lot of different scenarios, and on our side, we've had to learn that as well, because being that myself and most of my team, we skew toward being technical.
Yes.
Focus a lot on, building a solution or making sure it functions seamlessly. And oftentimes in that regard, you have this perfect widget in your hand and you haven't thought about how customers get access to it, or how somebody else can tell your story for you. And so that's actually one of the things that we're spending a lot of time on now, is like, I often tell my team is, how do we make sure that our reputation precedes us? Or, how do we have people outside of the office have the epiphany that we have every day? Because it's not oftentimes that you get to have an hour conversation with somebody to explain what you're doing or where you're going. And so those things you're describing now really help businesses go from, to scale, because somebody else is out. We're on a live conference, basically giving testimonials about somebody else's product. Like that's very important to make sure you can have that happening for your business or opportunity.
Yes. So in your startup journey, did you leverage the ecosystem up there in Atlanta, to kind of help you move forward, or?
I think, so the ecosystem in Atlanta, as you know, is burgeoning and growing. I leveraged it from a different perspective.
Okay.
So when I came back to Atlanta, I was in my, let me see, late 20s, early 30s, right?
Mm-hmm.
So, and had already, my business had been around for a while, my core business. Now,
yeah,
we did make a pivot from my services company, Cybers, to being more of a product business. And so as a result of that, to that point, when we first started Mantis EDU, which is the business I currently run,
mm-hmm.
we did take that through ATDC, which is
Okay.
an accelerator, and I think is one of the oldest accelerator ecosystems in the country. And so we did leverage that. And by doing that, as in most ecosystems there, you know, you have the ER, the entrepreneurs and residents and those type people. And so I use that as an opportunity to make a lot of connections and network. And so from that, if you go around the city now, I know most people. And so when opportunities present themselves or something's needed, you know, that exists. It also allowed for me when I was planning to invest, like, you know, looking at the investor side of the equation to meet companies that are growing as well. But yeah, definitely around. So early on, we were more connected around the Georgia tech ecosystem.
Yeah.
Present day, I moved my office up to, if you know, the Atlanta area, Buckhead, and we actually now have an office space in what's called Atlanta Tech Village.
Okay.
So Atlanta Tech Village is one of the more, you know, pre-COVID, you're talking about thousands of companies all living in one building at different stages. And so I did that because before, when I was in downtown Atlanta area, I had a private office, and my neighbors were like, for instance, Stanley Black and Decker and Google.
Okay.
And those guys aren't trying to connect and talk to you because they're on their own independent ecosystem. Now I'm in a building where, again, there are 200, 300 startups at any given time.
Wow.
And that allows you to kind of leverage that. So yeah, definitely that has been pretty interesting and helpful in the Atlanta area.
Yeah. So your first company that you were doing with the web stuff, you know, that was like a traditional approach for business, and you didn't have to worry about the ecosystem that much for that. Yeah. But the company, the STEM company you saw with the kits, did you leverage the ecosystem at all with that?
Well, that one is, I leveraged it just for marketing and buzz, or maybe just kind of connectivity, right?
Okay.
And so that's important. I think I'm more so focused on it now than before.
Okay.
So the first business was a consulting business. To your point, you call a customer, you get a contract, you knock it out of the park.
Uh-huh.
The 3D printing business was, most of the time we were trying to focus on distributors. So in that business, I'm on the phone talking to Kaminota, I'm talking to people like Dremel, and I'm conveying to these resellers, hey, I want you to go sell my product. Mm-hmm. Now, look at the education business that we're growing now. In addition to the physical hardware that we create, we're doing STEM camps, after school camps, summer programs. And so now it's very important that people know we exist, because I'm connecting with school systems, or in town, we're about to do a camp experience now in town with the Georgia Aquarium, or we're doing some things with, like, Microsoft was coming in town. And so it's very important that people in the ecosystem know what we're doing.
Yes.
So we can scale that. And actually a good example would be like programs now that are getting a lot of national news. So we participated in the first cohort for the Google Black Founders Academy.
Okay.
Again, that was a direct result of the Atlanta ecosystem.
Yes.
And out of that, a lot of the companies that were part of that program are now part of programs with Goody Nation.
Okay.
Goody Nation is really connecting everybody. So they have different groups on people focused on K-12, or people focused on community. And so all those things are really growing. There are some of those programs in the earlier stages now.
Yes.
But there are a lot of people who are part of those things. It's pretty cool to be able to see this ecosystem growing, and platforms like this and others that exist now allow for you to know who's doing what, and not necessarily be in your own little box.
Yes.
Because things are a lot more visible. So for me, the ecosystem is really important to help us amplify what we're doing, because frankly, we haven't done a great job in most cases of telling our story.
Yeah. Yeah. So like you hit on a lot of good things there. And just so you know, there's a couple of ed techs, in the audience, so
okay. Nice.
they're listening in, and so you got some really great experience. And it's kind of, you mentioned Goody Nation and our nonprofit, which we do start up on the blocks under, and plus we do our STEM stuff as well. So we're going to hop into their program for K-12, but I also told Joey that we want to be able to refer some startups up to make connections into that Atlanta ecosystem, and the Google for Black and Brown founders, stuff like that as well.
Yeah, they're doing an amazing job, and I think that people are starting to notice, which is allowed for them to get more resources. So it's great to see their program growing, because Joy in particular has been putting in the work for quite a while. So it's cool to see his infrastructure growing. I think a lot of people will benefit from that. And to that point, a lot of that stuff is anchored here, but
yeah,
even outside of the Google program, they're starting to grow across the country. So
yeah,
it'll be great when these ecosystems kind of can cross-pollinate. So it could
yeah, and
that's not just in Atlanta.
yeah, that's exactly right. So we don't have the momentum and all the stuff that's the big city of Atlanta, but we can connect to people like you and Joey, and through those connections we can keep moving forward. And so one of the things I try to get the folks in the audience to see like there's all that funding that's been set aside for Black and Brown founders. And I don't know, have you kept track of how much money has been set aside so far?
I don't know the exact number, but I have been tracking it for quite a while.
Yeah.
And to that point, you talk about networking. Honestly, I spend most of my nights and weekends reading articles and connecting with people in that space. So as an example, that was an article that came out yesterday that was quoting Satya from Microsoft about a lot of the work that Microsoft has done in this space, given, the metrics and the goals that he put out there. But you'll find articles like that and they'll name people.
Yeah.
Right. And so what I do when I see that, I go and find that person and I go to LinkedIn to connect with them. So
yeah.
I'm now connected with maybe 2 or 3 senior VPs at various companies who are named as being over these certain programs.
Yes.
And when I make those connections, it's not just, hey, follow me and connect on LinkedIn. I oftentimes every time I put a personal note saying why I'm trying to connect.
Yes.
And so to me, that almost insinuates that if they accept that, they know what the intention was. Yeah. Which is almost like, hey, that gives me the okay to follow up. And so there's a lot of stuff like that happening out there right now, and for resources. And it's interesting because on the capital side, like if you're an established business, I think there are a lot of sources that are going to present themselves for seed stage and follow-on funding. But on the flip side, they're also, depending upon what you're doing, there's a lot of early stage stuff happening now. There are a lot of grants that are presenting themselves to people who are part of the nonprofit ecosystem. Yeah. So I think there won't be a time like this for quite a while. And so I think we definitely need to find a way to explore these opportunities and raise our hand because the resources are definitely there.
Yeah. So I sort of pay attention to the press releases that are about the set aside funding. And the first one I saw was like what's the name of the company, the robotics company, SoftBank. The
Vision Fund.
Yeah, and they set aside $100 million, and then I saw a couple other companies set aside $100 million. But so as I kept in track so far, and I don't see all of them, I've added up over $3 billion that's been set aside for Black Brown founders.
But that's the hope is that it actually gets spent. And a lot of people do things to get the immediate push. So I think we gotta college people and make sure they show up and show out. And more importantly, make sure that when they do, a lot of people get to stage and they're not serious about what they're doing. So it's very important that we can come in and deliver, because if they see that, once they realize that these opportunities will bear results, then they will present more opportunities. Yeah. Right. And I think that's really, really important.
And so part of the reason why I bring that up, because we got some founders that we're working with on their startups, and sometimes I don't think they realize the opportunity that's out there. And so in the due diligence as a founder, you have to do in preparing yourself to kind of get ready.
No, it's a lot of work, man. Fundraising and preparing to fundraise is a full-time job. Yeah. And it takes you. It's funny now because I know, like Twitter now, as an example, you can subscribe to topics, right? Versus just subscribing to people. So some of the topics I subscribe to all the topics around things like investing and startup investing. So it's amazing to see how these ecosystems are different. Like there was a tweet yesterday from a lady. And she tweeted out and she said, I'm looking to help find resources for, I think, a female founder, a Latino female and a Black female founder. And it was a Caucasian lady, very popular. And there were maybe 20 responses from different venture firms or angel investors saying, DM me, respond to me, send me the information. But I was like, if that person were to go just ask that question themselves, they wouldn't get a response. So these networks really matter. And these ecosystems matter, but it's just amazing how close you can get to anybody you want to, but being clear on that narrative and what you're doing is very important.
Yeah, and so that's really good. And so being able to connect with people, and so I want to thank you. I think last week, week before last, you gave me a lead on the AI.
Yeah, they tell me you had a meeting. It was a good meeting, by the way. So.
Yeah. So
Lloyd doesn't play. He's already had a meeting.
So I had as soon as I got your text early that morning, I reached out to them that same day, and they responded, and
they're amazing.
Yeah, we had a meeting, and we're actually going to be presenting their course this summer. As part of our STEM program. Yeah.
Now, I figured you would like it. Like I said, they're doing amazing work. They're figuring their model out, but they've done a really good job putting the organization together. So, like you said, man, you never know, and you gotta pass along resources and not assume that you connect somebody that you're going to miss out. And I think that always keeps you top of mind, and people keep you in mind as being a resource. And so I think that's very important to do. Yeah.
It's definitely a small world out there, and just for the people out in the audience that have nonprofits that. AI EDU, they actually went through an accelerator last year, the Fast Forward accelerator for nonprofits, and I noticed they just put out an announcement. I guess on the 26th of this month, their applications are going to close for their accelerator program, and that's like a $25,000 grant that you get for participating in that program. Yeah. So.
And I want to just mention one point, because I don't think I think about it a lot, but I don't think that it gets mentioned enough, or maybe disrespected doesn't. But I think a lot of people, you talk about people in the audience looking to start businesses. And I think that if we were to kind of try to characterize that group, I would say a lot of people in that are entrepreneurial, meaning they want to do something themselves or do something that they can kind of be attached to. I just want to caution people that being entrepreneurial doesn't necessarily always mean you got to go start a business. It means that in some cases, there are a lot of people who are out thinking that being an entrepreneur means you have to be a CEO, versus finding ways to connect with people to go run a business.
Yes.
Right. So I think we got to find ways, these ecosystems, to do more matchmaking.
Yes.
People who have like minds and opportunities. And so find ways to collaborate, find somebody else you can kind of have an opportunity with. It's very lonesome being a single co-founder.
Oh, for sure.
So find ways to find somebody else you can connect with.
Mm-hmm.
You could be very entrepreneurial, but it doesn't mean you have to be the CEO. And I think that we will find ways to collaborate and do more if we can just think about it from that vantage point. But
I definitely appreciate you sharing that tip. And Y Combinator with their startup school, and they actually have an application out there now to help you match up with a co-founder. And I like their approach for finding a co-founder, to help you out is that they say you let the person work with you on a project for a month or two, a few months, and then if you like the way they work, it's a kind of dating for co-founders, and I've seen examples where it actually works, so that's kind of a good approach. And I think I wanted to get, if you would kind of comment, how have you leveraged partnerships in your startup ventures? Or
yeah, without question. That's a big part of what I do. As a matter of fact, I don't ever plan on growing a business without having partners moving forward. And particularly in the STEM space, that's something that so we're working on a few national partners, like I mentioned, from a distribution perspective. If you look at the work that we're doing around these summer camps, that's a good example. There's an organization down in Louisiana called STEM NOLA, run by Dr. Calvin Mackey.
Yeah.
He's an amazing guy. Mm-hmm. A lot of things happen, a lot of connections. So we just partnered recently where we ran, we did a machine learning camp for high school kids. Mm-hmm. That was a part of his cohort. Mm-hmm. So it's his program, but my team ran the entire operation for that particular.
Yeah. So you talk about Kevin Mackey, Dr.
Kevin Mackey.
Yeah,
exactly.
Yeah. Yep. And so, he just got over $1 billion in funding.
Exactly. Yeah. So him and I are partnering on programs to scale nationally because we bring different parts to the ecosystem.
Yeah.
I have university partners where, we, again, a few summers ago, UNCF, and I partnered with United Negro College Fund and Clark Atlanta University, and we ran one of the first ever. We ran 2-3 week experiences for middle and high school kids, mm-hmm. where they stayed on campus for 3 weeks, and it was a full-on residential camp, 24 hours a day.
Fantastic.
And again, my team brought in the tech, the curriculum, mm-hmm. and we leveraged those partners in doing things like that. And so in general, I try to find partners where we can kind of complement that. Mm-hmm. and make that happen. But that's definitely the way to go, without question.
Yeah, yeah. So yeah, we have Dan in the audience. He's from Canada, and he has an ed tech, and John and Jessica, I think Jesse's in the audience. They do Edgeosity, and so they come out with some neat stuff. And yeah, so you know, they may want to connect with you. So,
no, definitely reach out. My email is Walker LA at Mantis Edu, MANTISEDU.io is my email address. Please reach out to me or find me on LinkedIn, or I'm always on LinkedIn and definitely on Twitter. And like I said, beyond the work that we do now with the physical computing stuff, I do a lot of work in the education curriculum space as well. So I love the space, definitely looking for partners. And let's have a conversation without question.
All righty, fantastic. So, Pat, if you want to come on and turn your mic on and meet LaRon, and then we'll let LaRon go.
Hey, good evening, LaRon.
Hey, how you doing, Patrick?
Yeah,
I'm good.
So LaRon, Pat, you know, we met quite a while ago, but he was the first one that introduced that business model canvas to me, and I said, "What is this?" You know? which now, you know, a best practice for our startup on the blocks is the lean canvas. So, which I say, if you're not using that, you're not following the right methodology.
Nice.
Yeah. So, all righty. So, all right, LaRon, we definitely appreciate having you on.
Cool. Well, thank you guys. Enjoy the rest of the day, and please reach out. I look forward to connecting with anybody who thinks we have synergies.
Okay. All right. Thanks a lot.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right. So Pat, you're one of our mentors, and so we always like to kind of do a mentor highlight when we can on each event. So we're glad you're participating with us and supporting our founders. And so why don't you tell them a little bit about yourself, Pat?
Okay, thanks, Lloyd. And I appreciate the opportunity to talk a little bit about the mentoring that Startup on the Blocks offers and my background. In my profile in Hopin, you'll see a LinkedIn, you'll see a couple of different social media links for me if you'd like to do some research, but I pretty much have listed my career from inception until today. I started in life as my first job actually was the choir director and youth music minister at a little church in Pensacola. And from there, I've been CEO, COO, CFO. I've been a CTO. That's very scary, Lloyd. But my background is a CPA with Deloitte. My interest has been in technology. I built a computer in the 5th grade in Pensacola at O.J. Sims with a partner. It was a basic mechanical computing device. We were learning binary. And so it was a space race. Remember Sputnik and Man on the Moon? And that everybody had to study STEM. So I think that's a great notion for all of us today. But I'm not an engineer like Lloyd. But I am fascinated by all things numerical, and I love processes. That's the CPA, I guess, taxes and auditing. I moved to Atlanta and got a lot of experience there with large organizations. You might know Fulton County government I was a manager on that account. MARTA, the transit authority in the region, the city of Rome, Georgia, and a whole bunch of other commercial companies that made chemicals, made steel, made software, just a variety of industries. A great experience for a curious mind like mine.
Yes.
And so at this point, I've started 10 companies. I guess I quit my last full-time day job in the, let's see, when was that? It would have been actually, the truth is in 2009, the startup I was in, it failed. The angel funding people were big real estate people. And the big crash happened in 2008, 2009. They ran out of cash. The burn rate had not gone in, positive. And so we shut that thing down. It was based in Pensacola. It was a great idea, great business, great team of younger folks. And I started consulting with technology firms and others, early stage firms all over the world, actually. And that company still exists. I still work there on a very limited basis. I have a few clients. 80% of my time is director of entrepreneurial development. for CoLab Pensacola. We are proud to be neighbors with Lloyd in Belmont DeVillers area. I'm on the corner of Garden and DeVillers. It's the building the hurricane destroyed, and we're waiting somewhat patiently for it to reopen. It's been down since September. They're putting the flooring in, and the furniture is getting cleaned, and some insurance claims are in process, and those never go as quick as you want. But we're very much interested in people. Part of what I do there is also mentoring. So I do speak about financial things with the firms. But as Lloyd will tell you, having been a process person as a CPA auditor, it was all about processes. It was about understanding, control systems in financial reporting and in compliance. I was the Southeast U.S. Regional Statistical Sampling Coordinator for Deloitte. That's a lot of offices and a lot of CPAs who go, statistics? Because most accountants, statistics, debits and credits are simple, right? Left and right. Statistics is a little bit higher order of mathematical skills. So my job was to train and support teams all over the Southeast in our offices. And that was a lot of fun. The other thing I did was I actually re-engineered the human resources and counseling program in the office in Atlanta for the audit department. We had about 65 professionals, and they were very concerned about developing career training programs. And so that was really one of the first steps I took into mentoring was the fellow CPAs and the folks under me and laterally in terms of the goals of the organization and the training goals specifically to the projects and to the job levels that the people are in. So that's a little bit about mentoring. It's such an important part of a startup's journey to have someone that they can talk to about their crazy ideas and their problems. Lloyd, you've nailed it. I talked to a young lady in a startup in Washington, D.C. this morning, Bridget Jones.
Yes.
And she said, we're building a platform for startups to manage their software development teams.
Yes.
And the process. And she said, what we learned with our customers is they want to know about, well, how do I get an EIN number, right? How do what are these things called taxes? Do I need a lawyer? Do I need paperwork? And this is very common. And it's good to know that. And a lot of entrepreneurs have a certain amount of fear. We all do, face it, with saying, I don't know the answer to this.
Yes.
Part of being, I think, supportive of other entrepreneurs is understanding there's no judgment. The truth is, I've learned what I've learned by a lot of trial and error. I like to remember Thomas Edison's quote where he said, I did not fail 10,000 times inventing the light bulb. It was a 10,000 step process.
Yeah.
And I think it's that exact type of thinking that will inform you on your fear of failure as an entrepreneur. That failure, one quote I read, it was on my refrigerator, Mary Pickford, Canadian silent film star, said, this thing about failure is not about getting knocked down. It's about staying down. So that's the point. You got to get back up. And you got to keep asking. And that's what we do for our folks at CoLab, and what I hope to do for you all in the program that Lloyd and KuKua Institute have brought for the community at Startup on the Blocks. And really, check out my LinkedIn profile, my email, and my phone number are all there. If you need me, you can find me there. I don't hide. You can find me.
Okay. Yeah.
But any other questions or something you want to zero in on?
Yeah, so before we start talking about some of your stuff you're doing now, so you also, for the folks in Fort Walton Beach, I remember you used to do some consulting with Vervav Corporation. Are you still do or what?
No, I no longer have a formal engagement, but I do check in on them regularly.
Okay.
Nate and Jamie Smith are two very, very old friends of mine. Actually, I went to work for them in the 80s.
Okay.
At NASA in Huntsville. And then I moved to the Panhandle again, my home area, to work for them in their home office over in Mary Esther.
Okay.
And so, yeah, it's a great community in Fort Walton. It's probably easier to get there today than Pensacola from where I live in Tiger Point.
Yes. Yes. Okay. Well, yeah. That's so you were basically helping them with their accounting or with the government work, or kind of what was your role there?
Right. So I was in the NASA project was a startup project. We had to hire 100 people.
Okay.
When I got hired, I was probably I was employee number under 10. I was one of the
Yeah.
first 10 people. And I was the only non-rocket science engineer in management.
Okay.
I covered contracts, safety, training, accounting, just everything administrative, if you
Okay.
will.
Gotcha. Okay.
When I moved to the home office, they really had me. They were getting ready to enter a phase of a big downturn in terms of financial status. They grew too fast.
Yeah.
And that is a risk for a successful company, and a minority-owned business in the federal contracting sector can grow too fast.
Yes.
The 8A set-aside programs, and some of the way they ran that in the old days, you could get a ton of contracts, and then your scaling challenges were really difficult.
Yeah.
And so they went through some of that. But I was there to help them with basically lots of forecasting, lots of cost accounting, analysis of their project profitability, overhead analysis, forecasting, modeling, and in the end, a certain degree of pre-planning for a Chapter 11 bankruptcy filing, which I came back to them as a consultant after a while and actually helped them through the post-Chapter 11 phase. And they successfully exited Chapter 11, and they're still in business.
Wow!
And it's been 30 plus years, and they are still in business making money, which is just a real testimony, I think, to the team over there. It's a great team.
Yeah, that's fantastic. Yeah, I remember when I was still working for the government, they had so many contracts they didn't even they when they got in financial trouble, they still had money that the government owed them that they didn't have to go get somebody to help them get the money from the government.
It is an amazing thing when you get that big that fast, because again, I was the process thinker, so that might be something we call now design thinking.
Okay.
But processes require some design considerations, because if you're touching multiple functional areas within an organization, Lloyd, people sometimes just don't talk to one another.
Yeah. So for the startups out there, when you get to the point where you do want some office space, you run a collab down there, and so that's some discounted office space, I understand.
That is correct. The collab is a partnership with Pensacola State College and Florida West Economic Development Alliance. Actually, in the old days, it was the Pensacola Chamber and Pensacola Junior College. But it's been in business since 2008. We do offer a full set of services: furniture, internet, coffee, water, power. Air conditioning, everything is in the lease price, which is well below the market for office space downtown. And after the repairs from the hurricane, it is really nice space.
Okay.
I won't talk to our furniture, because all of that furniture is donated, used furniture from different organizations. But we'll see how our insurance claims go. Most of the furniture is salvageable, just needs to be cleaned up. But we hope to have a little bit of new stuff in the building soon.
Okay.
We have 22,500 square feet. About 10,000 is actually rentable, but only half of it is rentable. And we have 2 fairly good conference rooms. Lloyd, you've been in those rooms.
Yeah.
And those are free also, no charge to our tenants and clients. We have a policy board, and we do offer mentoring service with all of them and whoever else is in our networks. And I think Lloyd would say that I am a pretty active ecosystem builder in the Panhandle. So I can find somebody that might know the answer to your specific situation.
Yes, that's exactly right. All right. So I think you were the one that introduced me to Bob Foster a long time ago.
I did. It's all my fault.
Yes.
My lawyer introduced me to Bob, because Bob was moving here, And my lawyer said, you know everything about tech in the Panhandle. Talk to Foster. He wants to move here.
Okay, yeah. I always like to mention how people connect, and because it's a really, really important part of your growth. And so there is a question in the audience. Darius wanted to know, can you elaborate on growing too fast? I don't know if he's talking about a specific example of Verbal or just in general.
Yeah, thanks for that question, Darius. Let me just see. I don't know what Marcia is referring to as far as a toaster, but here's the basic thing that some people don't understand. There are two financial statements. Actually, there's more than two, but there's two that most people know about. There's a balance sheet and a profit and loss. So your profit and loss has sales and expenses, and then it has the bottom line, a net profit or a net loss. Well, you can grow that sales so fast that you can run out of cash. Now, that might not be quite true in some businesses, like retail businesses, where you're basically taking cash, and if you're growing and making a lot of sales, your balance sheet says, I've got not enough inventory because I've sold it all. Mm-hmm. So that's like how the math works. So suddenly now you say, well, I'm growing so fast, I need more inventory. I need more space. I need to hire more people. So suddenly you need to go borrow money or find some funding in order to make that next step up, right? So that's exactly what can happen when things grow too fast. You need more people, you need more equipment. You forget to bill the customers, Lloyd, or the customers don't pay very fast, mm-hmm. especially when you have credit terms in some businesses that offer those. So that whole managing of credit terms to your customers and credit terms from your suppliers, the math on managing cash flow can get extremely challenging. And so learning how the pieces of that puzzle fit together is something that I have been doing. And how did I learn? Well, a lot of pain. But when I was working in an unnamed company in Fort Walton Beach, it was having cash flow problems. I might have back up to Atlanta. I left the job at Deloitte to work for a global learning, education, services, and products company. And they also were in Chapter 11. They had a plan when I went there. I'd been the outside CPA watching mm-hmm. them build it, and they were succeeding. They were going to survive. I went to work for them, and what I learned is that they also grew too fast, but they had a very complex situation. This is complicated. Follow me. They had a lot of receivables in yen in Japan from their customers, consumer receivables, mm-hmm. and they had a $70 million line of credit at Bank of America in Los Angeles that was denominated in dollars. Well, if you all look back to your old Wayback Machine of the 70s, U.S. interest rates got to 20%, a plus briefly. Well, when the U.S. interest rate went so high, guess what happened to the value of the yen? Well, it collapsed. So 100 yen was no longer worth as much. Their collateral was no longer worth the debt. And the bankers went, you're done. We're in charge. So, so there's other risks besides growing too fast. They grew fast, but they had a line of credit. In that case, they did not manage their foreign currency rate change very well. And so you see, there's a very complex, how do you manage your growth, to a simple one of, I need more inventory, more people, and more equipment. And how do I get the money for that? Because I've run out, because I've sold so much.
Well, I think it's time to kind of like make a point, so like this platform we're on, Hopping, so they just got noticed as the fastest growing company ever in Europe or London area. And so they went from launching their product in February 2020, and I remember because I got introduced to them in March, I believe, and they had just got like $7 million in funding, and then in July they got another 40 million, and then in November they got 125 million on on a $2.1 billion valuation, and then just a couple of weeks ago, they got 400 million on a 5.65. So they grew fast. But their business was scalable. And so you want to comment from like a financial accounting standpoint, what's different about, growing fast in that sense?
Well, that question you asked is also embodied in the next question that Darius asked, Lloyd.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
So if you are investor funded, or even if you're a self-funded bootstrap, the point here is you really need to understand your financial modeling.
Yes.
In terms of you're going to sell things. There's a process. There's going to be marketing efforts and marketing costs. There's going to be product or service costs, and there's going to be overhead and general costs, labor and accounting, the back office stuff. So you have to have a decent financial model, forecast, budget, call it all those words, because you want to know what your forecasted cash flow is. And there are many tools you can find online. The challenge is a lot of people don't understand the nuance of the models. When I work with a startup client, as a paid consultant, and I give this to folks at Collab, but I don't have the time to really spend going, because it takes several hours, because you have to break down every aspect of the business processes in order to understand the relationships, so you can build a very dynamic model. Mm-hmm. where you're integrating your assumptions. And what happens is that discussion of, well, what are your assumptions on how this works? What will you do to build sales? And what will it cost to deliver this? And how much space will you need? And how many people will you need? And so there's a very robust, basically, discovery process.
Yes.
To build that out, Lloyd, Darius, and others. Mm-hmm. So if you know from a model your cash flow, see, the people that are out in Silicon Valley or in larger markets getting VC or angel funding, they're looking at net cash flow, and they're looking at their burn rate.
Yes.
And what they're doing is they're looking at how deep the red ink goes. A month by month cash flow tells you I'm going to lose $100,000 a month. I'm going to lose $200,000 a few months. And in 12 to 18 months, that's my general experience, you should have turned the corner and you're positive cash flow in that 12 to 18 month window. Mm-hmm. And so what you want to know is, what's the deepest hole? What's the cumulative cash that you're going to need with that model to keep your business open?
Okay.
And the other thing you need to know is, you need to start raising money 6 to 9 months before you hit the bottom, because because you're going to it's going to take 6 to 9 months to go raise money. That's a general rule of thumb. It can be faster or slower. Mm-hmm. So it's really about looking at a plan with some metrics and budgets or cash flow forecasts, and managing the costs and the revenue growth together to keep it in line. Mm-hmm. Okay, that's very important. A simpler business, you're there at the cash register, or you're there writing the checks, all that. But the great funded, the big funded companies, they got armies of people that are doing all this, and they've got all that money to throw at experts and teams to figure it out. But for a small business, to me, I would recommend that you sit down with your accountant or with someone, or heck, come to Collab and have a discussion that's ongoing of, how do you make sales? And what does it cost to build, make, or deliver your product? And what are the back office operations? And how do they relate to scaling? That's the real trick, is understanding scaling and their impact, which may be linear, or it may be what the accountants call a fixed cost. But fixed costs are actually staircases usually. Mm-hmm. They're like, it's like the server farms in the old days.
Yeah.
Now you have capacity on demand at Rackspace or whoever, right?
Yeah. So I want to bring this point up. One of our startups, they're in the trash removal business, and so a business like that is a service business, and it's hard. That company can grow, but it's hard to grow fast or scale fast. So it wouldn't be in a kind of in the startup ecosystem, it couldn't really fit in there. But the founder, she's come up with a way of automating their idea on how to automate their quoting and where they can onboard customers a lot faster. Now that idea is scalable, because yes.
I agree. And the other, so in that kind of a business, you do have some investment in equipment.
Yes.
And so I would say there's a large capex, capital expenditure involved in scaling that business. There are solutions to those things. I mean, really.
But in the startup world, in this ecosystem, they're looking for stuff that actually can actually scale fast. And that's kind of, so that money that's set aside for Black and brown founders, that $3 billion, that's mainly focused towards companies that actually can grow fast, which is kind of is the definition of a startup. It's something that
it is. And they don't. Most investors are not big into capex intensive kind of startups.
Yes,
but doesn't mean you might not have an investment in capital equipment of some sort. Mm-hmm. The right answer is you need a line of credit at a leasing company because you want to keep that off your books.
Yes,
and generally speaking, once you get traction and you're profitable, and hopefully either your investors or your founders have some credit, have a decent credit score. You can do miracles with a business and getting credit after a while. So,
yes, and so so this is kind of a loaded question, Pat.
Lloyd, it won't be the first one or the last one you ask me.
But the startups you see in collabs, how would you actually characterize most of them? Would you say they're trying to build these highly scalable businesses, or in between a highly scalable business and a traditional business? How would you kind of characterize them?
Well, I'd say number one, most of them have aspirations to build scalable businesses. Mm-hmm. Some of them, when they come in, may have a very little idea what that might take or what that might mean. Okay, that's the process. What we're trying to do. It's very similar to the Spring Venture Mentor Service and the MIT program that I was trained at. They're not trying to actually build companies through the mentoring. They're trying to build entrepreneurs,
right? Because
they know that an entrepreneur, not every entrepreneur is going to succeed in every venture. Yeah, they're trying to give them the knowledge and the awareness and, if you will, the self-confidence.
Yes,
to survive inevitable failures. To continue trying, and then something's going to happen. If they, what the angel investment VC world in Silicon Valley, the last time I checked, they don't consider you to be a seasoned entrepreneur until you failed 3 to 5 times. Mm-hmm. They figure the other investors paid for your training program.
Yeah. Well, the MIT mentoring program, the thing that struck me the most about it was, when I went through the training as a mentor, they said most of the founders that they worked with, over 50% of them had even wrote their business idea down on a piece of paper. They started really learning early, and that's kind of what we're trying to get people out in the audience to see. You have to learn the best practices for building a startup before you jump out there and move forward with it. And so that's kind of what you have to kind of get involved in the ecosystem and kind of learn what's going on, and so you don't go out and waste a lot of money.
Or to put it very briefly, as I tell the people I meet who are interested in a startup and collab, I always say to them, well, we should talk some more and let's look at where you are. And rule number 1, don't quit your day job too soon.
Yeah. Righty. Well, anything else you want to share before we wind up here? I got a couple of charts I'm going to share, and so, but this is mainly reiterating what we already been talking about.
Just one thing I tell you about entrepreneurs in the Startups on the Blocks or your networks, please get with Lloyd or I. We do have a monthly entrepreneurship ecosystem group that meets now virtually.
Yes. Mm-hmm.
But hopefully we'll be back in collab at some point in the next month or two. And the purpose of that is to expose entrepreneur support organizations and entrepreneurs to one another. Lloyd has been very regular attending those and contributes greatly with updates from all of the various things he's involved in. Everybody's welcome. And if you're extra special, when we rejoin Taco Thursdays at CoLab, we'll invite you over for tacos, but we only have space for a few at a time.
Okay.
Thanks, Lloyd.
All right. Thank you, Pat. I appreciate you
Sure.
coming on. And
Can I click leave now, Lloyd?
yes, yes.
Thanks.
All righty. So we appreciate Pat coming on, and I'm going to see, can I queue up this PowerPoint here and then share my screen. But I kind of just want to run over a couple of things, before we sign off here, just to make sure people understand what we're trying to do. And so the startup on the blocks thing is all about knowing what the best practices for building a startup, and also getting the founder the right skills that they need to kind of build a company. And so even though we try to make we talk about things that are good for everybody, but we tend to target founders of color, and so. But one of the reasons why we're doing that is because of this over $3 billion that's been set aside for Black and Brown founders, and the kind of thing that I want to make sure people understand is that one of the reasons why we're doing it, the main reason why we're doing it, is because we're trying to do this innovation-led economic development, and what that means is that we want you to kind of start down here and getting familiar with the ecosystem, and then when you start to build your startup, then what you're going to be doing is you're going to be innovating and growing your startup to the point where you can get to the top of the pyramid, and with the wealth and job creation. And these two guys here, I've been following them for several years, and they've been documenting this process of this innovation-led economic development, the inclusive economic development as well. So those are some good guys, and I've been sharing their stuff. But the real reason why this ecosystem exists is because is that these high growth startups, they're responsible for more than 50% of the new job, whereas traditional small business startups are only account for about 20% of the new jobs. And so and startup on the blocks, we're trying to get people at the future founder stage and sort of kind of do it. So but what I've noticed in the short time we've been doing this is that there are a bunch of small businesses out there that have discovered problems that in running their business that if they can figure out how to solve those problems, they can actually create a startup around that. And so for all these people out there that's running these traditional small businesses, there is an opportunity for you to get and take advantage of some of this other funding. This is a kind of a more detailed thing of the same thing. You start off early on with your idea. But the key thing, what we want to do with Startup on the Blocks is we want to get your individual mindset ready for the startup journey. And this link here, this startup playbook by the guy that originally founded Y Combinator, it tells you everything you need to know about. Because once you get your mindset right and learn the best practices for a startup, you can take advantage of all these things in the ecosystem. And I did a post on the Startup on the Block Facebook page yesterday, and basically if you look at the ecosystem for Black and Brown founders, all over the United States, that there's 700 and something organizations of things, people that support Black and Brown founders in there. But what I want to kind of communicate is that if you don't get that mindset and learn the best practices, and this ecosystem that's having all these pitch competitions and these accelerated programs, it's going to be hard for you to get in those things. And I was happy I ran into John Rigsby earlier today, and they had applied for the one of the generator accelerator program in the ed tech space, and so they're actually going to get an interview, to be an accelerator. And I told them that was like fantastic, because most people don't even get a chance to do it. So, but if you kind of learn these best practices, you can. So, can you imagine you put in an application, and then in a couple of weeks they're going to get the pitch for $100,000 to get in an accelerator program? How sweet is that? But if you don't know how to fill out the application, you don't know the best practices, you're dead in the water. And so, and LaRon was on earlier today, and we can try to connect with the people in these different ecosystems, mainly because there are opportunities. I put a post in the Facebook today on Startup on the Blocks of they were having demo days down in Miami today for one of those accelerator programs that had Black founders in it. And so there's just so many programs and so many things going on. If you don't do your due diligence, you're actually going to get left out. So we definitely appreciate you all working with us and attending to tonight's event, and feel free to reach out and connect with us, because we really want to help you with your ideas and help you move forward. And we appreciate Pat, coming on and sharing some expertise, and LaRon, out of Atlanta, coming on and sharing some expertise. And I hope you all had some fun in the networking tonight and got a chance to make some new connections. And of course, you see how powerful connections are. And look, I definitely always give Pat some credit, because that lean startup methodology, that business model canvas stuff, I was out there wasting money before I hopped on that bandwagon of leveraging that to kind of move forward. Thank you all for attending. Look forward to seeing you next week. Click the link that's in the chat and register for the event next week. Thanks all for coming and participating. Good night.